Hello and welcome to the Freelancers Tea Break, the short and sweet podcast you can enjoy whilst you're making a cuppa. I'm your host, Emma Cossey, and this is the podcast for anyone who is already freelance or is thinking about going freelance. Right, let's talk about how much should your freelance fees be. Actually, I'm going to disagree with myself completely already because there's no should. There is a responsible level of what you should charge as a freelancer so that you don't undercut others or devalue the industry and things like that. But there's no perfect fee that you should be charging. But there are some really useful guides that might be helpful. So before I go into these guides, I will say they are based on people volunteering their fees and that information, which usually then means that there is some bias towards people who are comfortable and confident with what they charge. So they are likely to be at the higher end, but I still think they're really valuable. And I do think one in particular is very good at giving a good range of them. So the first one is YunoJuno. I'm going to put all the links in the notes for this one. So YunoJuno, they tend to do every year a different guide and it's split into all the different industries, and you can get a really good idea there. Of how much people are currently charging annually, not annually, whether it's daily or hourly, that sort of thing. LondonFreelance.org is another one, and I find this one slightly more reliable in that people can anonymously submit, which they can with the other things, but you can basically go on and people would submit particularly for writing gigs, what they were last paid. So this is really good if you're thinking about submitting an article idea or a photography shoot or anything like that. They will basically say on there what they were last paid by that publication. So it's londonfreelance.org and they do have some good other resources on there as well. IPSE, who are the organisation that support contractors and freelancers, they do a lot in terms of fighting on our behalf for things like support with IR35 or against it. They do a lot with the Small Business Commissioner. They are very much worth following anyway for their newsletters. But they do an annual report of fees as well, and they give a guide to how much people are getting paid. I would also, although it's not a formalised report, the Reddit Freelance UK has quite a few good resources. I've seen quite a lot of threads in there of people and how much they're charging. I think it's particularly interesting with any of these to compare men versus women, how much they're being paid, because men are often charging more. And maybe those of us who are women or identify as women maybe need to follow that example and up our rates a little bit as well. I include myself in that. That is something I definitely need to look at. So, and the other thing that you can look at around all of that is just literally look and Google for people in your industry who, particularly if they're local, because say you're in Manchester or Wales and there's not a lot of point comparing your rates versus, say, London rates, because they will be slightly different due to costs of living. That's not to say that if you live in any areas that you shouldn't charge less because of that, but just consider that as they have the public transport costs to include as well if they're not working from home. So there's quite a few different places that you can look at. I would also always recommend having a look at Sally Farrant's website. She has a calculator on there where you can type all your information in and it will give you an idea of how much you could be charging as well. But that will hopefully give you a starting point. So YunoJuno, londonfreelance.org, IPSE, and have a look at some of the conversations on Reddit, and then do some localized research. Hopefully lots of people will have it on their websites, and that will give you some guidance. But if you have any more questions, do come and join the community in Discord or Facebook. The Discord one is definitely busier now than the Facebook. I think Facebook is starting to be less popular because Discord just is a bit easier and it's a bit safer. So do come join us in the community and hopefully you can get some feedback there as well. Have a wonderful freelance week.